Good morning, everyone. It's Pastor Brammick at Holy Shepherd Lutheran Church. Today is Saturday. It's August the 3rd. It's time for our daily devotion. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 17 today, and we're starting at verse 48. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their dead were strewn along the Sharaim road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem, and he put the Philistine's weapon in his own tent. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, O king, I do not know." The king said, "Find out whose son the young man is." As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." After David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. From that day, Saul kept David with him and did not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. Whatever Saul sent him to do, David did it successfully. But Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the people and Saul's officers as well. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from the towns of Israel to meet Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs and with tambourines and lutes. As they danced, they sang, "Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Saul was very angry. This refrain galled him. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. All right, so I thought we were going to get to this yesterday, or the lectionary was going to get to this yesterday, but we finished this account up today with David killing Goliath, the Philistine. Samuel makes a point to say that he does it without a sword, and that is to say that this is God's doing. That surely you're not going to be killing a giant with just luck and a slingshot. But God gives David this victory over Goliath, and as a result of this, David finds favor with Saul, and Saul then promotes David. David is now no longer going to be tending sheep in his father's house. He's no longer going to be running back and forth between doing some work for Saul's government and then tending sheep for his father. Now he's just completely in the army, and he's rising in the ranks. Saul's son Jonathan takes a liking to David, and this is probably the deepest friendship between two men in the Bible that you'll find, between David and Jonathan. Jonathan goes so far as to give David his robe, his tunic, and his sword, which is an extreme act of devotion and loyalty to David. And this is a friendship that will last for the rest of Jonathan's life. The account finishes today on an ominous note. There is, as David is gaining these victories, people are singing, and the women of Israel are singing about how Saul has killed his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. And this refrain makes Saul very jealous. And from this point on, Saul will have an antagonistic relationship with David. Now, Saul already is going to be losing the kingdom. David has already been anointed as the next king. But Saul does not know that, otherwise Saul would kill him. But at this point, there's kind of this writing on the wall that there's going to be this tension between Saul and David. And, we see the beginnings of Saul's jealousy, that the people have turned in high favor towards him. Saul thinks this means that David is now going to try and take the kingdom from him. And David will go out of his way to prove in the coming, for us, the coming days ahead, that is not true at all, that David will have the opportunity to take the kingdom by murdering Saul, but he will not do it because he respects the fact that Saul has been set apart by God. And, David has an extreme faith in that, which God blesses, as opposed to Saul, who thinks politically, who thinks in terms of himself, and who, is really going to be out to go after David at this point. So, and as I said earlier, that David is a forerunner of Jesus. Genetically, he is, because Jesus will come from the line of David. Also, spiritually speaking, Jesus is the descendant of David who will sit on the throne of Israel forever, except it will not be Israel the nation, it will be Israel the church. And so we'll talk more about that as things develop. But for now, let's continue with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift his countenance upon you, give you his peace. Amen. Okay, announcements for today. Season Saints is going to be happening this coming Tuesday at 1 p.m. I've scheduled confirmation orientation to happen on Saturday, August the 17th, and that will be at 10 a.m. In the morning. And let's see. Mahjong will be next Thursday at its usual time at 10 a.m. So I think that's all the announcements I have for this morning. God bless you. Thank you for watching. And I will be back on Monday.